Hi, thank you very much for having me. This is a wonderful conference and I'm very proud to be invited to speak. I'm here to talk about reduction. Have you ever wondered how to track what does not exist? And that's primarily reduction. If you go to the effort of diverting material, at some point you're going to try and start eliminating items. And so what is waste reduction? The US EPA uses the term to mean any action undertaken to eliminate or reduce the amount or toxicity of materials before they enter the municipal solid waste stream. Reuse is a type of waste prevention, but in some instances, and it depends on how you track it at your facility, reuse can be either part of your actual diversion and or reduction. And so with that said, I always start with highest and best use. This is a very important term because we're looking at what is the best for the environment, what is the best for a business or a community, and a large part of that is reduction. How do I reduce things? And with that said, it's looking at both prevention as well as reduction, then looking at reuse, recycling, and then disposal. So let's start with the math. And the math, if I include reuse, is quantified by having your trash, landfill, and or waste to energy, what your recycle is, and then what your reuse is. The way I calculate that is I add those three different commodity streams together and I get a total. And then I divide recycle and reuse into the total generated weight, and I know that my diversion is 83.6%. Now, in the business atmosphere, which is where I primarily work, most businesses do not want to add to this volume that exists. And so through True Zero Waste and through the documentation, we have actually created a zero waste diversion rate where I continue to keep track of my diversion rate. And then I create another section in my Excel spreadsheet for zero waste diversion. And that is when I add reduction to the recycle and reuse. And so if you look at the formula and the setup here, I add reduction, reuse, and recycling to total generated weight. And you can see that the diversion percentage has changed. It's actually gotten better. And so that's one way to track this. Now, with that said, for true certification and zero waste certification, companies must track their actual diversion, including reduction and zero waste diversion. Now, by actual diversion, you've got a couple different ways that works. It is the fundamental numbers that are generated, whether you have a compactor or an open top. You have physical weights that are generated. Those are part of this, but when you have a front end loader, you have to worry about an estimate, but we use that as a volume to weight ratio so that you have a scientific guess versus just, because the waste hauler is not going to be able to give you that information. So required for true is to identify at least one material being reduced, collect the documentation, establish a methodology to calculate that reduction, and that's how you're going to track that information that's required. For reuse and reduction, you have to establish a process to track the documentation of a specific item, reuse of pallets, incoming or outgoing shipping containers. The methodology is to quantify the number and the monthly volume on how you're establishing these processes. So let's give an example. Pallets maintain a maximum value through reuse. Most desirable. So as you set up your guideline, you're going to say, I want them to be 40 by 48 pallets, four-way pallets. That means you can put a pallet jack or a forklift on all four sides. You want to ensure that there's no raised nails, missing baseboards, or any stringer. Stringer is this bottom part of the pallet, that none of those are missing. And then some vendors will accept off sizes and broken pallets, but may not offer a rebate if you're running them through the program. A critical part of this is about safety. This is about ensuring that what you give for reuse is of quality material so that they don't say, oh, this is sort of broken, I'm not going to reuse these. And then you've got a stack of pallets and you've gone through the efforts without the value of reusing them. For the tracking, you can work with those people in shipping and receiving, or whomever actually is the ones touching the pallets, to establish what the guideline is. In addition, we use like a piece of painter's tape across a length, so 10 high, and every time they move those 10, they put a hex mark on that piece of paper, and then I leave them with either a phone number or a fax line for them to ship every month that list of how many pallets were reused. In addition, we work with the shipping and receiving department to establish money, because we're saving them money by reusing pallets. So for the month, we'll mark down that they had 46 pallets. The average weight of 23 pounds equals 1,058 pounds. Then we're going to look at cost. There's a couple parts to cost. Cost from not buying a pallet, $736. Cost to not landfill it, which is avoided disposal costs, and you add those two numbers together. For reduction, you're looking at different ways to quantify numbers. So one of them is office reuse, and that is the duplex printing of anything on a printer. It's preset so that you're always printing 2 copies. Now, the easiest way to calculate this is to establish a year-end run rate. I bought this many cases of paper, and what did you do the next year after you implemented duplex printing? So you'll take one from the other, quantify that, and then I also add in the dollars associated, not only for the cost of this, because we're saving money, but also the weight. And that goes in that other section. A different item for reduction, and this one's a really important one in my opinion, is using durable goods. This is a very large facility up in Redmond, Washington, that tried out 2 different things. They did it both at once. They completely gave durable goods in the break areas of 1 full building. And in addition, they went into the cafeteria and they had only durable goods. So no to-go containers at all. And so as we did this, the staffing team would document how many forks, knives, spoons, cups, tea diffusers, plates, every single thing that they stocked. We tracked that for an entire month. And then in the cafeteria, we sat down and established a key weight for each of those items and multiply it by the number of meals served. So we got an average disposable weight of 1.25 ounces. That was a plate, a spoon, a fork, a cup, and that was it. That would work either for using a bowl and a spoon and a cup or whatever. It was just an average. We know that they sold 26,400 meals. That came out to 2,062 pounds savings of not using disposables in the cafeteria. Then we did the exact same thing through the break area. And then we went into dollar savings. Now, we did not include labor in this model. We weren't looking at that. We were looking at durable goods. What is the savings over landfilling? What is the saving over purchasing these items? And then we added in the avoided disposal costs. So for the month, they saved $11,850 on eliminating the disposables and or compostables and avoided landfill cost. Now, did that save them enough money in the labor part to make this work? I'm not sure. We didn't evaluate that. So a little bit more detail on how we did the math ahead of time, establishing what was involved and multiplying it out. And why documentation? I mean, the key to this is, can I tell a good enough story to my customers, to my clients, so that they understand that all the work that we're doing for zero waste, which helps climate action, is the next best thing to us being able to quantify where we're going. And so reduction is a really important part of this, not only for quantifying, but also the weight and the diversion number, but also the dollars that can be saved. Lastly, I want to talk about grass cycling. This is something that is missed by a lot. If you click on this calculation, you will be able to go to CalRecycle, and they've got a great calculator in there about grass cycling, or you can go to calrecycle.gov and do a search for grass cycling. It's a great process. The key to this is documenting how often you mow. So I'm in California and we mow often. I mowed 2 weeks ago. But if I'm in Oregon, I might only mow for 5 months, and I might only do that, so often. So the calculations have to be documented what the process is, as well as where you're trying to document. And then lastly, the key takeaways here. Simplify and gather facts. Do the discovery. This is probably the most time consuming. I also think it's important that if I find someone that I need to talk to, let's say in the cafe program, I try and get the title of the person that's helping me besides the name and the phone number, because job positions change or they leave the company. And I want to make sure that I have that documentation. The documentation is about the process. What are the guidelines associated with that documentation? And then the direction that you're taking. And then the third part of this is the data, quantifying the data. Do your absolute best to keep it apples to apples, because if you separate it and you do different things, it's not the best of quality. You're going to be shooting at it and saying, wow, that didn't work as well as I thought. So thank you very much for having me. Here's my contact information if anybody wants to reach out. And I appreciate, again, being invited.